The rain hit the window with a rhythmic patter, each drop a reminder of Jack Reynolds' dark, restless nights. At 37 years old, he was a man broken by war, haunted by the memories of battles fought far away from home. The small apartment felt suffocating, like a cage he could never escape from, and the four walls closed in on him every day. He hadn't been able to escape the things that kept him awake at night, the sounds of gunfire, the screams of comrades, and worst of all, the image of his canine partner, Rex, left behind on the battlefield. Jack ran a hand through his messy hair and stood up from the couch, staring at the framed picture on the wall. The picture showed him and Rex, both in uniform, standing proud together during one of their last missions. Rex's eyes in the photo were bright and full of life, just like Jack's once had been. But that was a long time ago. Now, there was nothing left but darkness and the weight of guilt. "You're broken, Jack. You're not the man you used to be," he thought to himself, his reflection staring back at him from the window. His thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. It was Emma, his younger sister, the only person who still tried to reach out to him. "Jack, I'm worried about you." Emma's voice was soft but laced with concern as she stepped into the room, her eyes scanning the space with a mixture of love and worry. Her presence was the only thing that could break through the cold shell Jack had built around himself. "I'm fine, Em," Jack muttered, turning away from her, his voice low and devoid of emotion. "I don't need your pity." Emma sighed, her brow furrowing. "This isn't pity, Jack. I just want to help. You've been a shell of yourself since you came back. Don't you see that?" He looked at her, the pain in his eyes evident. "I don't need fixing. You think this is easy for me? I left him out there, Rex. He's gone, Em. He's just gone." His voice cracked, a rawness in his tone that betrayed the years of emotional suppression. "Jack. Rex is still out there. He's alive." Emma's voice was a whisper, full of hope. Jack's expression darkened, and he turned away, walking toward the kitchen. "You don't understand. He was part of my team, and I failed him. He's better off without me." Emma moved closer, her hand on his shoulder. "I don't believe that. He needs you just as much as you need him. Please, come with me. Let's go to the shelter today. Just, see for yourself. I promise you won't regret it." Jack was silent for a long moment. He could hear his sister's soft breathing behind him, feel the warmth of her concern, but something deep inside him recoiled from the thought of confronting his past, the one thing he had been avoiding since he returned home. Finally, he exhaled sharply, his resolve cracking under the weight of her plea. "Fine. I'll go. But don't expect me to play nice. You know I can't do this." Emma smiled softly, relief washing over her. "You don't have to do anything, Jack. Just come with me." They left the apartment, the cool air of the afternoon greeting them as they stepped outside. The drive to the shelter was quiet, filled only with the hum of the engine and the sounds of Jack's thoughts swirling in his head. He couldn't shake the feeling that visiting the shelter would only dredge up more pain, more memories of Rex, his partner, his friend, who had been forced into retirement after sustaining injuries during their last mission together. As they pulled into the parking lot, Jack hesitated. The shelter was modest, and the familiar scent of disinfectant mixed with the soft sounds of barking dogs in the distance filled the air. Emma stepped out of the car, glancing at Jack. "Come on, Jack. Let's just see who's there." He didn't move for a moment, his eyes lingering on the entrance. "What if he doesn't remember me?" His voice was barely a whisper, as if saying it out loud made the possibility more real. "We'll never know until we try." Emma's words were gentle, her tone unwavering. She reached out, gently touching his arm. "Jack, you saved him once. You can save him again." They walked into the shelter, the sound of dogs barking louder now, a mix of excitement and confusion filling the air. Jack's heart raced as they approached the adoption area, where several dogs paced in their cages, eager for attention. And then he saw him, Rex. The dog was lying in a corner, his once energetic posture now subdued, his fur matted, and his eyes dull with disinterest. Jack's breath caught in his throat. It was Rex, but not the Rex he remembered. The dog that had once been his loyal companion now seemed broken, lost. Rex didn't even lift his head when Jack approached, his ears drooping, his body tense. Rex? Jack's voice was shaky, full of uncertainty. Rex slowly turned his head, but there was no recognition in his eyes. Instead, the dog looked at Jack with a distant, fearful gaze. He whimpered softly and turned away, retreating further into his corner. No. Jack whispered, feeling the weight of the moment sink in. Rex, it's me. Jack. But there was nothing. Rex didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge him in any way. Jack stood there, rooted to the spot, a flood of emotions overtaking him. Guilt, loss, helplessness, everything he had been running from came crashing down in that single moment. Emma, who had been standing silently by his side, spoke softly. Jack, it's okay. He's been through so much. You have to give him time. He'll remember you, I know it. Jack's hands trembled as he reached out to the bars of the cage, his heart breaking. I don't think he'll ever remember me. His voice was barely audible, thick with emotion. He fought to keep his composure, but the pain was too much. Rex, his faithful K9 partner, didn't even recognize him. Jack stood frozen, his hand still gripping the bars of the cage. The feeling of failure washed over him like a tidal wave. Rex, the dog he had once fought alongside, the one who had saved his life more times than he could count, didn't recognize him. It felt like he had lost him all over again, only this time, it was his fault. Jack, it's going to take time, Emma said gently, standing by his side. She had a soft smile on her face, but even she could see the devastation in Jack's eyes. Jack shook his head, still unable to move. I don't know if I can do this, Em. I came here hoping that maybe, just maybe, we could go back to how it was. Emma stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. You're asking too much of yourself. He's been through a lot. You've been through a lot. But you've got to believe in what you two had, Jack. You saved him once. You can do it again. I know it. Jack's voice was rough when he spoke. I don't even know where to start. The shelter worker, a middle-aged woman with a kind face, approached them. I know this is hard. Rex has been through a lot. He was forced into retirement after that last mission, and it really took a toll on him. He was a highly trained military dog, and after he was retired, he just didn't adjust well. But you're right, he's been through so much. He needs a familiar face, someone who can remind him of the good times. That might be you. Jack looked down at Rex, who was still lying on the cold concrete floor, his body curled into a tight ball. There was a hint of recognition in Rex's eyes, but it quickly disappeared, replaced with uncertainty and fear. Jack felt his heart break all over again. I don't think I can fix this, Jack said, his voice barely above a whisper. The shelter worker smiled gently. You don't have to fix him. You just have to be patient, Jack. It's not going to happen overnight, but if you keep showing up, if you keep trying, he'll come around. Dogs are loyal. They remember, even if it takes time. That night, Jack returned to his apartment, his mind heavy with the weight of what had just happened. The image of Rex, lying there so broken, kept replaying in his head. It haunted him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that his attempts to rebuild their bond were futile. He sat in the dim light of his living room, staring at the photograph of him and Rex from their time in the army. They had been inseparable then. I promised you I'd never leave you behind, Jack whispered to the picture, his voice thick with emotion. But I did. I failed you, buddy. The silence of the room enveloped him, the only sound being the soft hum of the refrigerator. For a long while, he just sat there, drowning in his thoughts, until he heard the sound of scratching at the door. It was Rex. Jack stood up quickly, his heart pounding. He walked to the door, unsure of what he would find. When he opened it, Rex was standing there, his tail wagging cautiously, his eyes filled with uncertainty. Jack bent down slowly, his hand trembling as he extended it toward Rex. "Hey, buddy," Jack said softly, his voice quiet and full of longing. "I'm not going to leave you, I swear. I'm here now. We're going to fix this, together." Rex stepped forward hesitantly, his body still tense, but his nose gently touched Jack's hand. It was a small gesture, but for Jack, it felt like the first sign of hope. The following days were filled with small victories. Jack continued to visit Rex at the shelter every day, determined to rebuild the connection they once had. At first, Rex didn't seem to respond to Jack's voice or presence, but Jack didn't give up. He brought familiar items, his old military vest, Rex's favorite toy, the whistle he had used to call him during missions. Slowly, Rex began to show signs of recognition. It wasn't much, but when Rex responded to Jack's whistle for the first time, Jack's heart swelled with emotion. "That's it, Rex. Come on, boy. I knew you remembered." As Jack spent more time with Rex, he began to understand that healing wasn't just about Rex remembering the past. It was about rebuilding their bond, one step at a time. Jack realized that he couldn't rush Rex's recovery any more than he could rush his own healing. They were both broken in their own ways, and it would take time for both of them to heal. One afternoon, after weeks of patiently working with Rex, Jack brought him to the park they used to visit together. It was a familiar place, a place filled with happy memories. The moment they entered the park, Rex paused, his ears perking up. His body stiffened, and he seemed to hesitate, unsure of what was happening. But then, slowly, he began to walk forward, his pace quickening as if remembering the joy they had shared in this very spot. Jack, feeling a surge of excitement, pulled a ball from his pocket and tossed it gently. "Go get it, Rex," he called out. For a moment, Rex just stared at the ball, then back at Jack. Jack's heart sank, thinking that perhaps Rex was too far gone to remember. But then, in a burst of energy, Rex ran toward the ball, his tail wagging. He jumped and caught it mid-air, just like he used to. Jack's breath caught in his throat as he watched Rex trot back to him, the ball in his mouth, his eyes bright with the spark of the past. "You still got it, huh, boy?" Jack laughed, tears welling in his eyes. He knelt down to take the ball from Rex, who now was acting like the dog Jack had once known, loyal, energetic, and full of life. It was a small victory, but to Jack, it meant everything. It meant that their bond wasn't broken. It had simply been buried under the weight of their shared trauma. And now, with patience and persistence, it was slowly being restored. Days turned into weeks, and Jack's routine with Rex became a steady rhythm, one that was both comforting and filled with quiet moments of progress. Every morning, Jack would wake up early, his mind focused on the single goal of rebuilding his bond with Rex. He no longer saw the dog as just a reminder of the war, but as a companion he could rely on, a partner who, like him, had been broken but was learning to heal. The shelter staff had continued to offer their support, helping Jack understand Rex's behavior and what steps he could take to encourage Rex's recovery. Jack had already learned the hard way that he couldn't rush the healing process. Trust had been shattered, not just between them, but within Rex himself. Jack had to rebuild it, piece by piece. One evening, Jack sat with Rex in the living room, watching him closely. Rex was curled up on the rug, his body tense but calm. Jack had long since stopped expecting instant results. Instead, he focused on the small signs, Rex looking up when Jack spoke to him, the way his tail would twitch ever so slightly when Jack approached him. Jack gently called Rex's name. "Rex?" The dog's ears twitched, but he didn't move. Jack smiled softly, not disappointed, but patient. "We'll get there, buddy." Jack had been using the same techniques every day, calm voices, familiar scents, and a slow return to their old routine. One of the biggest hurdles was getting Rex to trust his commands again. The once quick and reliable dog had become hesitant, afraid to follow instructions. Rex's eyes, full of confusion, would often look up at Jack as if questioning whether he was still the man he had once followed without hesitation. A week later, Jack decided to take Rex on a walk through the neighborhood, away from the confines of the apartment. Emma had suggested it, an outing that would be just for them, a chance to bond outside the house. Jack was uncertain, but the thought of seeing Rex slowly reconnect with the world outside brought a small glimmer of hope. They walked slowly, Jack keeping a tight grip on the leash as Rex sniffed the air, his eyes darting from side to side. Jack's heart pounded in his chest, his body tense. It had been so long since Rex had been out, and Jack couldn't help but feel that the old joy, the excitement Rex used to have on walks, had been lost forever. The weight of their shared trauma hung heavily between them. "Come on, buddy. Let's go for a walk. You used to love this, remember?" Jack whispered softly, trying to reassure Rex. At first, Rex hesitated, pulling back with every step Jack tried to take. He would stop, look back at Jack, and then move forward a few steps before freezing again. Jack didn't push him, instead, he kept his pace slow, giving Rex the space he needed. Then, something unexpected happened. As they reached the park near their neighborhood, a familiar scent filled the air, the scent of fresh grass and the sounds of children playing. Rex's ears perked up, and for the first time in weeks, Jack saw the slightest twitch of excitement. His body language shifted, and with a hesitant step, Rex moved forward, leading Jack toward the park. The moment they reached the open field, Rex stopped. His head turned, and he scanned the area. Jack could see the change in him, he was alert, awake, as if something deep inside him had been triggered by the surroundings. Jack smiled, holding the leash loosely in his hand, letting Rex explore at his own pace. Rex hesitated for a moment longer, then, without warning, he bolted forward, running toward the children playing on the swing set. Jack's heart leapt in his chest as he jogged to catch up, a laugh escaping him for the first time in weeks. The dog was playing again, chasing after the children, wagging his tail, looking almost like the Rex he had known. For Jack, this was the breakthrough he had been waiting for. Rex had finally responded to the open space, the familiar surroundings, and the sound of laughter. It wasn't immediate, but it was real. As Jack watched Rex play, he felt the weight in his chest lighten. For the first time in what seemed like forever, there was joy. Rex had begun to play again, not just to obey, but to enjoy. Jack felt as if a door had opened between them. This was a turning point, a sign that trust, although slow, was starting to rebuild. They stayed at the park for a while, Jack letting Rex roam free, his laughter echoing through the air as Rex chased a ball Jack threw. Each successful run, each time Rex returned to him, brought them closer together. The bond was growing again. That night, after the walk, Jack sat on the couch, Rex resting beside him. The dog lay quietly, his body less tense than before, his breathing steady and calm. Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of peace settle over him. It was a quiet peace, a peace that came with knowing that, slowly but surely, they were healing. Jack reached out and scratched Rex's ears gently. "You know, I didn't think we'd make it here, but look at you now, huh?" Rex shifted, looking up at Jack with his deep brown eyes, his tail thumping softly on the floor. Jack smiled, his heart full. "I knew you had it in you." As Jack reflected on the progress they had made, he realized how much of their journey mirrored each other's. They had both been scarred by war. They had both been left broken by the battles they had fought, but now, they were both healing. Each moment of progress, each small victory, brought them closer to the companionship they had once shared. For Jack, Rex's recovery was not just about fixing the dog, it was about fixing himself, too. Rex's slow but steady return to himself gave Jack the strength he needed to continue his own healing. The more Rex trusted him, the more Jack believed that maybe, just maybe, he could start trusting again, too. The days that followed their trip to the park marked a turning point in Jack and Rex's relationship. For the first time in months, Jack could feel the weight on his chest slowly lifting. Every morning, when he woke up, Rex was by his side, waiting for him to start the day. The dog's presence, though still reserved at times, brought a sense of calm to Jack's otherwise turbulent life. Jack had learned to take things slow, he no longer expected immediate results from Rex, and in turn, he had stopped pushing himself so hard to fix everything. He gave himself permission to simply exist with Rex, to focus on the little victories and the quiet moments where the bond between them grew stronger. One morning, Jack sat at the kitchen table, drinking his coffee in silence. He glanced over at Rex, who was curled up in his usual spot by the window, watching the birds outside. There was something peaceful about the way Rex lay there, his eyes calm, his body still. Jack couldn't remember the last time he had felt this at ease. "Hey, buddy." Jack's voice was soft, a gentle greeting that had become routine. "You ready for another walk today?" Rex lifted his head slightly, his ears perking up. Jack smiled, recognizing the small shift in his demeanor. In the past, Rex would barely respond to his voice, but now there was a flicker of interest. It wasn't much, but it was a sign, Rex was coming back to him. The walk was uneventful at first, just a quiet stroll around the block. Jack kept the leash loose, allowing Rex to explore at his own pace. The dog still walked with caution, but there was a noticeable difference in his movements. He was more aware of his surroundings, his tail occasionally swaying. They walked past the same park where they had played a few days earlier, and Jack stopped, watching Rex carefully. For a moment, Rex hesitated, looking around the familiar landscape. Jack's heart skipped a beat, wondering if the dog would remember. Then, with a soft grunt, Rex moved toward the entrance of the park. Jack's pulse quickened as he followed, but he didn't rush him. He let Rex take the lead, letting the dog navigate the path as he saw fit. When they reached the open field, something incredible happened. Rex stopped at the center of the park, looking up at Jack as if seeking approval. Without a word, Jack knelt down, gently pulling the ball from his bag and tossing it a few feet ahead. For a long moment, Rex just stared at the ball, his body tense. Jack's heart pounded in his chest, unsure if Rex would engage. Then, without warning, Rex lunged forward, running after the ball with an energy Jack had almost forgotten he had. The sight of Rex sprinting across the park, his tail wagging as he ran, was enough to make Jack's chest tighten with emotion. "There you are, buddy," Jack whispered, his voice cracking as he watched Rex leap and catch the ball midair. It was a simple act, but to Jack, it felt like a miracle. Rex was back. The spark of the dog he had once known had returned, and with it, Jack's hope. The afternoon spent at the park was one of the most rewarding days Jack had experienced in a long time. Rex played fetch for hours, the bond between them solidifying with every throw of the ball. Jack laughed freely, watching Rex dart across the field, his energy and joy infectious. For the first time in months, Jack felt like he was seeing the real Rex again, the dog who had been by his side through so much. The weight of the past seemed to lift, if only for that moment, and Jack finally allowed himself to believe that things could get better. That night, as Jack and Rex sat on the couch, exhausted from their time at the park, Jack reflected on everything that had brought them to this point. He had spent so many nights thinking that Rex's trauma would be an insurmountable barrier. He had doubted their ability to reconnect, but now, sitting with Rex at his side, Jack could see the truth. Healing was never easy, but it was possible. "You're not just my partner, Rex," Jack whispered, stroking the dog's fur. "You're my friend. My brother. And I'll never give up on you." Rex, for the first time in weeks, leaned into Jack's touch. He nuzzled against his hand, his eyes soft and content. Jack's chest swelled with emotion as he realized just how far they had come. It wasn't just Rex who had healed. Jack had, too. The journey wasn't over, but for the first time in a long while, Jack could see a future with Rex by his side, one filled with hope, trust, and love. The next morning, Jack awoke to the sound of birds chirping outside, the sun shining brightly through the window. He looked down to see Rex already awake, his head resting on the edge of the bed, watching Jack with expectant eyes. It was a small gesture, but to Jack, it was everything. They were healing together. The mornings had changed in the Reynolds household. The once silent apartment, filled only with the echoes of Jack's memories, was now alive with the soft sound of Rex's paws on the floor, the low rumble of his growls as he chased after a toy, and the quiet rhythm of Jack's heart slowly healing. Every day, Jack found himself smiling more often, his heart lighter than it had been in years. The days spent with Rex, walking in the park, playing in the yard, or simply sitting together in the stillness of their home, were becoming more frequent. The bond they had once shared, strained by time and trauma, was now being restored, piece by piece. One morning, Jack stood in front of the full-length mirror in the hallway, adjusting his shirt. The reflection staring back at him was different from the man who had arrived home after his service. There was a new strength in his posture, a calmness in his eyes that had been absent for so long. It wasn't just the recovery of his relationship with Rex, Jack had begun to heal too. Rex padded into the room, his tail wagging as he nudged Jack's hand, seeking attention. Jack smiled, kneeling down to scratch the dog's ears. "Ready for another walk, boy?" Jack asked, his voice soft but filled with warmth. Rex barked in response, a joyful sound that seemed to radiate pure happiness. The walk was their daily ritual, the moment Jack looked forward to most. The neighborhood had become familiar again, the morning air crisp with the promise of a new day. As they strolled together, Jack couldn't help but marvel at how far they had come. Rex, once hesitant and fearful, now walked proudly by his side, his head held high. The dog had regained his confidence, and Jack had found a new purpose, one that didn't revolve around the weight of his past, but rather, the promise of the future. At the park, they played their usual game of fetch, Rex sprinting with unbridled energy, catching the ball with the same agility he had once had in the field. Jack laughed, feeling the joy of the moment course through him. He had forgotten what it was like to truly feel happiness, but with Rex by his side, he was beginning to remember. Later that afternoon, after a long day of errands and bonding, Jack sat down at his desk, the familiar weight of his war memories creeping back in. He had been avoiding dealing with the paperwork, the red tape that came with his return to civilian life. The trauma had always made it difficult to face the reality of what he had been through, but now, as he looked at the forms in front of him, he felt something different. There was a quiet strength within him, something that had come from his time with Rex. It was as though Rex's healing had ignited something inside of him too, something he thought he had lost forever. As Jack worked through the paperwork, Rex lay at his feet, a quiet presence that grounded him. Every so often, Jack would pause, glancing down at the dog, who would look up at him with eyes that spoke of loyalty and understanding. It was in these moments of silence that Jack realized how much Rex had taught him: patience, resilience, and the power of simply being there for someone, no matter what. Jack thought back to the days when Rex had first come into his life, an eager young dog, full of energy and determination, always ready to jump into action. Now, they were both different, wiser, more reflective, and scarred by their shared experiences. But they had made it through. They had found each other again, and that, in itself, was a triumph. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack and Rex sat together on the balcony, watching the world slow down for the night. The quiet hum of the city below was a stark contrast to the chaos Jack had lived through, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like peace. The air was cool, and Jack could feel the weight of the day lifting off his shoulders. Rex rested his head on Jack's lap, looking up at him with trusting eyes. Jack gently scratched his ears, the same way he had when they first met. "You saved me, Rex." "I owe you everything," Jack whispered, his voice barely audible. He hadn't said it before, not in those exact words, but he knew it was true. Rex had been there for him in ways no one else could understand. The dog had not just helped him heal, he had given him a reason to keep going, a reason to fight through the darkest moments. In the months that followed, Jack and Rex continued to rebuild their lives together. Jack began volunteering at local shelters, helping other veterans and their service dogs reconnect, just as he had with Rex. He shared his story, showing others that healing wasn't a straight path, it was messy, difficult, and full of setbacks. But it was also beautiful. It was worth it. Jack had found a new purpose, one that no longer revolved around the horrors of war. Instead, it was built on the foundation of trust, love, and companionship, the bond he had with Rex. And Rex? Rex had become more than just a companion. He was Jack's anchor, his constant reminder that no matter how far they had fallen, they could rise again. Together. One evening, as Jack sat on the couch with Rex beside him, the dog nudged his hand, seeking attention. Jack smiled softly and patted Rex's head. "You and me, Rex. We've come a long way, haven't we?" he said quietly, his voice filled with contentment. Rex wagged his tail in response, his eyes shining with trust and loyalty. Jack felt the weight of the world lift off his shoulders in that moment, knowing that whatever came next, he would face it with Rex by his side. They had both found healing in each other's presence, and for the first time in a long while, Jack felt whole. This story highlights the deep bond between a war veteran, Jack, and his canine companion, Rex, exploring themes of trauma, healing, and the power of second chances. It shows how love, trust, and patience can help overcome even the darkest scars, both for humans and animals. The journey of rebuilding their connection is not just about Rex recovering but also Jack rediscovering his purpose and regaining his own sense of peace and joy. The story reminds us that healing is a journey, not a destination. Both humans and animals experience trauma, but through compassion, patience, and persistence, we can rebuild relationships and heal. It also teaches us that loyalty and love are powerful forces, strong enough to mend even the deepest emotional wounds. Every living being deserves a chance to heal, to trust again, and to find love and companionship. If this story touched your heart, we invite you to share your thoughts by liking this video, commenting, and sharing your emotions. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss another meaningful story like this one. Your interactions are a huge encouragement for us to keep creating more heartfelt content. Every like, comment, and share helps us continue to inspire and uplift others. Thank you for your support. Once again, we sincerely thank you for watching and being a part of our community. Your presence and support mean the world to us. We hope you continue to join us for more inspiring and meaningful stories. Stay safe, and we look forward to bringing you more heartfelt content soon.